Yo ho, he to a pirating we go. And if we're parted by a shot, oh, we're sure to meet below. The day I'm filming this, we just got some stills from Our Flag Means Death Season 2. So, truly is a pirate's life for me. And then it took me so long to make this video that Season 2 came out and Season 3 got canceled. Awesome. Hi, by the way, we're talking about Peter Pan and Wendy, the 2023 adaptation of Peter Pan. Did you guys know that there was merch for this movie? I sure as hell didn't. I'm actually, like, kind of surprised by the lack of marketing and merchandise for this film. Like, I was at Disneyland, like, a month after the film came out, and I saw nothing. Like, no toys, no shirts, and there is merch. I just didn't see any at Disneyland, which was weird. There was, like, obviously there was stuff for the 1953 Peter Pan. Like, I got some pins and a magnet and stuff, but for this film, nothing. Absolutely nothing. Like, there was Little Mermaid stuff everywhere, but Peter Pan, nothing. Like, I can't even get a DVD of this movie. Is there even gonna be a DVD? Sorry, I know that this is kind of a weird way to start this video, but there were, like, a couple of things that were bothering me that I wanted to just kind of get out of the way before the actual, like, review and plot synopsis happened. So the first thing that was bothering me was Disney's seeming lack of, like, investment in what, spoilers, I actually think is, like, a pretty good movie. I really don't have any moral or ethical reason to be salty about this, but I do like to complain, and so I shall. Harumph. So that was the first thing that bothered me. The second thing that bothered me was people's reaction to the film before it had even come out. Sorry, Disney, Universal already made the perfect live-action Peter Pan. Why, the 2003 Peter Pan is the only one we'll ever need. These articles, like, don't actually make any slams against the 2023 because, again, the film had not come out yet. But why, like, apart from clickbait, and yes, I fell for it, I clicked on it, why would you be beefing with a movie that hasn't even come out yet? And why make that comparison in the first place? It would be like if I walked up to someone and I was like, this duck soup will never be as good as this foie gras. Like, okay, I guess. Like, that's not the soup's fault. Why must you pit two queens against each other? So besides these articles, like, clickbaiting people, the other category of preemptive keyboard clacking was about how Disney's gone woke. For, like, the 40th time. Got it. Like, just look up Peter Pan woke on Twitter. Sorry. X. It's just a nonstop avalanche of people making the exact same tweet. Yet another woke-swapped remake of a Disney classic. Peter Pan is Indian. Tinker Bell is black. The Lost Boys are girls. Captain Hook is still white. What if he was just the best for the role, though? Isn't that the fucking argument that these people always make anytime, like, there's diversity in a work? Like, oh, you need to give everyone a fair chance. Everyone should get to audition so that the best person can be found for the role. So what if he was the best person for the role? Does that argument only work when you want it to? Because you don't like diversity? That's what I thought. I mean, at least the comments under the YouTube trailer tried to be funny. Let's read some now and laugh. I loved the part where Tinkerbell turned from white to black, destroyed racism forever, then restored world peace. Timeless classic. Oh my god, that was my favorite part too. I loved the part where they say, we are the lost pronoun. The lost pronoun. The scene where Wendy turns to Peter and says, that's my secret, Peter. I'm always angry. Then smashes the patriarchy with one strike was inspiring. So stunning. So brave. Oh my god. Like, truly some maidenless behavior happening in these YouTube comments. Alright, now that we've got all that out of the way, let's talk about the movie as someone who actually watched it. By the way, this is my skeleton. His name is Humphrey Boogart. I work at, like, a daycare, and we had Pirate Week a couple weeks ago, and they didn't have a lot of decorations. So I brought all of my own. I was kind of afraid that my coworkers would make fun of me, but they were like, everyone should have a bunch of pirate props ready to go. And I was like, you know what? You should have a bunch of pirate props ready to go. We start in the home of the Darling family. It was a dark and stormy night. Mr. and Mrs. Darling are getting ready for an outing while John and Michael are pretending to be Peter Pan and Captain Hook. One of the first lines we hear Michael say is, Peter Pan doesn't care about time. And oh boy, are we gonna come back to that. It turns out Wendy is getting shipped off to boarding school. It turns out Wendy is getting Sorry, my voice is dropping even more. It turns out Wendy is getting shipped off to boarding school, so like she's supposed to be packing, but she's like procrastinating, and when mom comes in to have a little talk with her about the future, we actually get the first song in the movie. This movie, I don't think it is like a musical per se. Maybe like there's no like dancing and singing or anything, but there are two lullabies and two sea shanties, and they actually are like pretty. They kind of slap. The kids go to bed, the parents leave, and then in flies Tinkerbell looking for Peter's shadow. She's flying around, she actually wakes up all the kids, and John catches her, and they're all like huddled around looking at her, and they're like, "What is that? What is it?" And Peter's sword appears, followed by Peter, who says, "She is a fairy." Ooh, what a woke movie. Someone got corrected on pronouns. I want to briefly talk about the outfits. I absolutely love what the darlings are wearing. John and Michael are wearing these cute little like jammies. Like John has a little matching like two-piece set. And Michael has like the little like footy pajamas that is like all one piece. Wendy is wearing, I think it's like period accurate underwear basically. It's like Edwardian undergarments. And I'm pretty sure that they are called combinations. Combinations are a joining of two undergarments that are usually separate but sometimes come together as one, like basically romper. It consists of the chemise and drawers, and over that Wendy also wears like this very pretty evening gown, which is like blue, and it's a very pretty like color. It really pops out from any environment that she's in. Okay, Peter's costume is great. In the book, he's described as wearing skeleton leaves, which like, what does that even mean? Like, is it what's a skeleton leaf? I don't know. I would say that this look is very reminiscent of the Maude Adams look with the deep green tunic and the iconic archer's cap. But on top of that, his clothes are like very earthy. Like the shirt isn't like one big piece of material. It looks like it's actually like made of like mossy stuff, and it's like in patches. It looks like he made it himself. It's actually kind of like asymmetrical. Tinkerbell obviously is in green. Instead of like having it be like a big leaf or like flower petals, it's like a mossy like kind of like a top, and then what looks like tulle and like beads of some kind. I'll have to show some pictures. I'm not really sure what they were going for. And I can't find any like behind the scenes making of the costumes because God hates me. The Lost Boys, who we'll see later, have parts of their outfit that are also like very earthy, like there's like vines and moss incorporated, but they also for the most part are wearing like people clothes that had stuff like added on later. So I guess the people clothes they either stole from the pirates or they came from wherever the kid was spirited away from. So it's like kind of like a mismatch again, like it's something that like a kid would do, you know, where they just kind of like use whatever they can to like patch things up and like accessorize. Oh, hello. Hi. Hi, baby. Don't eat that. Don't eat that. No, no, no. Baby, you have to sit out of frame. Otherwise, everyone will know this is just a set and I'm not actually sitting in the middle of a jungle. Peter also has like these goofy little pointy elf shoes, which I loved. I kind of wanted them to have like little bells on them. And now I'm going to tell you something that makes perfect sense. The lead costume designer for this film is Nagila Dixon, who also worked on every Lord of the Rings movie. She's also been working since the 80s, so like she's done a lot, but I feel like that fantasy experience specifically is like, yeah, she should work on a Peter Pan movie, shouldn't she? Anyway, so Peter has now made his appearance, and when the kids rightfully are like, what is my bedtime story doing alive in my house? Peter smugly says, they always act so surprised. Solidifying for me that this actor went into this role knowing 100% that Peter is a lovable little turd. So 10 out of 10 immediately. Peter starts looking for his shadow, as he does. He finds it, and then Wendy offers to help sew it on. I noticed even as early as this that they made Tinkerbell... Oh, I'm still wearing my glasses. They made Tinkerbell like a lot less bitchy in this version. Like, she obviously objects to the sewing needle because it's a weapon. She doesn't know what it's going to be used for. But she does back down when Peter asks. Like, it's not like a I own him kind of thing. It's genuinely just being protective. I know that my review is reliant somewhat on me summarizing the plot, but I don't want to go word for word because there actually is like a lot of cute dialogue in this movie. I will say that the shadow is sewn on, there is the exchange of a kiss, and then we're ready to go to Neverland. In this movie, they actually show what the happy thoughts are. So Wendy, we see like this very dreamy, like flashback basically of her younger, like childhood years, like when she was carefree and like playing with her family. And those flashbacks actually will be important later. Spoilers. Once they're in the air, it's like a mostly original song with little parts of You Can Fly, kind of sewn into it. The nods are just that. They're just a little nod, and then the rest of the song just completely stands on its own. So I respect that. There's a lot of imagery and symbolism about clocks in this one, like more so than usual. We have the Peter Pan doesn't care about time thing. John has a little pocket watch with him. Obviously, there's a clock inside of the crocodile, and that's like a big thing with Hook's story. But then there's also the way that they get to Neverland, which is to fly through Big Ben, opening a sci-fi portal that bends time and space. Each adaptation gets to decide, like, where exactly Neverland is and how it works. Like, do you follow the second star to the right? Is Neverland the second star to the right? Do you just fly a little bit off the coast of England, or do you hit warp 9 and zap into another dimension? So I like the way that the way to Neverland is like this weird clock thing, and it's like interesting, and it's in touch with the themes of the film. I mean, I would hope so. I would hope that the director of The Green Knight understands themes. So we get to Neverland, and I want to go to there. All of the indoor sets were in Vancouver, and all of the outdoor sets were in Newfoundland, specifically in the Faroe Islands. The camera work when they first get there really gives itself to this wonder. Like, besides the mermaids we see in the water, nothing about Neverland looks immediately magical. But just the fact that it's this new beautiful place and they're flying around it makes it so exciting. There's this one shot I really like where Peter and Wendy are flying over these rocks, and through some camera mumbo jumbo it stretches like you're looking down from dizzying heights. I don't know what kind of film technique you use to do that, but I liked it. Maybe it's like a long lens, I don't know. So the pirates spot the kids, and the first thing that Hook does when he appears is kill a man. Okay, maybe he just shot him, but that's what I'm talking about. Modern Disney are a bunch of pussies who are afraid of killing some bitches. But you might be asking, isn't violence inappropriate for children? No. Children love violence. Trust me, I teach a bunch of 3-year-olds, and I can't get them to stop wailing on each other. I also used to be a children. When I was 6, was I watching Hook because I appreciated the deep themes of the transformative power of love and the beauty of fatherhood?
No.
I was watching because I wanted to see some bitches get stabbed with a sword. Hook tries to murder them with a cannon, kind of like in the animated, because that's a good way to show how much of a horrible prick he is and to get the plot moving. And then I guess Wendy gets knocked out and she washes up on shore of Neverland. The first person to find her is Tiger Lily, followed by the Lost Boys. And yes, some of the Lost Boys are girls. I pointed this out in my trailer reaction, but this actually isn't the first time that there's been girls in the Lost Boys. Just 2 examples off the top of my head are in this book called Straight On Till Morning, where one of the Lost Boys is a little girl who actually disguised herself as a boy, specifically so that she could go to Neverland. And the other is a French children's animated show about Wendy the Third, who's a descendant of the original Wendy, going to Neverland with Peter. And in that one, it's the Lost Children, which in French is Les Enfants Perdus. So yeah, earlier in this video, we saw that people were mad about the inclusion of girls in the Lost Boys. But like, 1, again, it's been done before. 2, girls exist, so shut up. And 3, like, if we're really getting into it, more times than not, Peter has been played by a woman. Like, this story, Peter Pan, belongs to the weird girls. 'Cause I wanna be a weird girl, weird girl, weird girl, weird girl. If you, a grown-up, truly think that girls can't be Lost Boys, I'm sorry, but you're stupid and dumb and wrong. Also, just to add to the fact that I am correct, here's a quote from an interview with Jude Law. Being a Lost Boy is a state of mind, right? Neverland is a place owned by everybody, so everyone deserves to go. So true, bestie. Hello, it's a different day. I had to take down parts of the set because someone was eating the fake vines and candles. I don't know if you knew this, but sets are not for eating. They're not for eating. Live action One Piece came out today. Yes. So anyways, while Wendy is with Tiger Lily and Les Enfants, John and Michael are kidnapped by the pirates and brought onto the Jolly Roger. And oh look, there's some lady pirates. I don't remember seeing any gnashing of teeth about that. It's almost like the people mad about girls in the Lost Boys don't actually care and didn't watch the movie. Anyways, the boys are brought into Hook's Mojo Dojo Casa House, and it is really gross. There's like a crocodile skull. There's a dead fairy carcass pinned up like a butterfly. In other adaptations, Hook is kind of a dandy. Like, he enjoys music and flowers, and he wears very frilly clothes. But here he's, like, grimy. His fingernails are, like, all dirty, and his hair is, like, long and unstyled and gross. I mean, I guess I can excuse that. How do you wash your hands with one hand? Like, there's a tea set in his office, but, like, there's nothing feminine about this adaptation of Hook. In my initial notes, I wrote, "He's so far from homosexual, they gave him heterochromia." I'm funny. In an interview, Jude Law and David Lowery said that the reason that they had two different colored eyes is because he, like, messed up one of them, like, with the hook hand. I think that the brown one is supposed to be the messed up one. Like, that one's scarred because, like, he, like, forgot that he had his hook and he just messed up his face. But additionally, I have a reason that I made up while watching the movie, which I will talk about later. I can know the actual reason for things and still make fanons. Who's gonna stop me? David Lowery doesn't know where I live. We also get introduced to the fact that Hook has, like, a bunch of rules. They're all numbered, and, like, he's very strict about them. One of them is no clocks or watches, so he takes John's watch and just smashes it right in front of him. Another rule is never to say Peter's name, and the boys break that rule, so Hook immediately has them taken to Skull Rock to kill them. This Hook is such a creepy asshole. I love him. Since we're on the ship and we're about to go to Skull Rock, I want to talk about the sets. I love them. First of all, I love practical sets. The set of your film is only good if I can bite it. I wrote that weeks ago, and my puppy took it literally. So I guess I can't be that mad. As I said, the outdoor scenes were in the Faroe Islands. The rest was sets in Vancouver, and the sets are real good. Like, first of all, the set of the Jolly Roger is all real. It's 110 feet long, and it's on one of those big machines that lets it rotate, so that's nuts. And the set for Skull Rock is also, like, a practical set. And I have a lot of appreciation for any kind of indoor set that involves water, because I just assume that that's got to be a nightmare. Anyways, they go to Skull Rock, the adults on boats, and the Lost Boys in underground tunnels, which apparently connect different parts of the island together, which I don't think it's ever mentioned in another part of the movie. I would love to explore more of that. And while all this is happening, we get our first slapper of a sea shanty. Peter shows up and fights some pirates, and something happens that I wasn't expecting. So after all the other pirates are dealt with, Hook and Peter square up. Peter says, "Dark and sinister man, prepare to meet thy doom." And Hook responds, "Proud and insolent youth, have at thee." Lines like that are for losers like me, so thank you, people writing the movie. I appreciate it. There's also a nod to, like, the walking off a cliff gag in the 1953, which, again, is for losers like me. Thank you. I see you. I appreciate it. And on top of that, during the sword fight, Hook and Peter's shadows actually start having their own separate fight, which I thought was interesting. I can't think if there are any other adaptations where somebody else's shadow is as independent an entity as Peter's. At some point, Hook gets the upper hand, and Peter starts to say, "To die would be an awfully big adventure." And then Hook finishes that sentence as Peter's saying it. I'm sorry, James. Have you been here before? Are you bored, maybe? Put a pin in that. We'll come back to it. So right on schedule, our girl the crocodile shows up. I don't know if I've mentioned this in any other videos, but fans apparently call her TikTok. For obvious reasons, there's a clock inside of her. It's up to every adaptation how big she's going to be. Like, in the animated one, she looks like about the size of, like, a real, like, young crocodile, so, like, a very tall man. In this one, she's a dinosaur, basically. She just, like, tears into the scene and immediately eats a bunch of pirates. I need to do, like, an official body count for this movie. I'll do that while editing, if I remember. So Hook is dealt with, and the day is saved. Easy peasy. But after all that, Wendy is actually, like, less than impressed with Peter. While they're walking away, Peter's being all cocky, like, "Oh yeah, I saved the day. I'm a hero. I did it all by myself. It was all me, no help at all." And Wendy actually pushes back against that. She says, "You have a magical fairy that makes you fly, a gaggle of children to do your bidding, and a princess who cleans up your messes while you're off gallivanting with pirates." Damn. Got him. She actually challenges Peter on his, like, self-centeredness, and, like, he deserves that, obviously. He's a very self-centered character. He always is. But in this conversation, he wants to be the immovable object. He tells her, "This is Neverland, where nothing ever changes, least of all me." I'm sensing some themes. It is front and center in this movie that Wendy is just not feeling it. Wendy, as a character, in most of, if not all adaptations, is going to Neverland because she's running from something or avoiding something. And normally she lets herself get, like, swept up in this new world and then eventually grows to be dissatisfied. But this Wendy feels like the vibes are off from the very beginning. When they get to the hideout, Wendy and Tiger Lily actually, like, stay back for a second to talk about Wendy's feelings and, like, how she feels kind of lost and how she doesn't know where home is. At this point, I was going to write a joke about how the movie passes the Bechdel test, but honestly, when the two of them are together, they, like, never talk about Peter. They're, you know, just having, like, a girl moment talking about their feelings in the future and home and their emotions. Feminist win. So Tiger Lily in this adaptation is Cree. In 1953, the natives were Algonquin. In the 2003, they were Iroquois. Honestly, I think people should just keep making Peter Pan adaptations until every single tribe gets a turn. And then maybe by that time, it'll be Star Trek times, and Disney as a company will have collapsed with the collapse of capitalism. And maybe by then, I'll actually be halfway done with this series. I really thought I was going to make all these videos in a month, in 2020. There are a lot of Peter Pan adaptations. I really like Tiger Lily in this one, although I don't know how actual native people feel about her. She's not the main character, obviously, but she does have, like, a good amount of screen time. But I wonder if people see her as, like, a little too wise. Like, sometimes sort of writing rut you can get yourself into is making, like, the sagely minority, you know? So, I don't know. If you're native, let me know. At least she doesn't get kidnapped in this version, so that's something. Oh, speaking of diversity, the boy who plays Slightly, aka my son, who has done nothing wrong, has Down syndrome, which is nice. I feel like a lot of times when people are making, like, films and TV shows and they're thinking about diversity, they only are thinking of, like, racial diversity, so sometimes people with disabilities and, like, stuff like that kind of get left behind. I also feel like sometimes when people make a character with a disability, their disability has to serve, like, some kind of narrative purpose. So to see just a person with Down syndrome just existing in a movie, that was really nice. As the film goes on, I have some questions. Namely, what is the motivation for Tinkerbell and Tiger Lily to be hanging out with the Lost Boys? Like, just Tiger Lily by herself is, like, way cooler than the Lost Boys, but, like, especially Peter. I say this with all of the love in my heart for this character and also this version of this character in this adaptation. Peter's, like, a depressed loser. Like, I don't... I mean, I guess it's a small island. It's good to be friendly with people, but I don't know. I don't know how old Tiger Lily is supposed to be. I think she's supposed to be, like, a teenager or a young woman, but I don't know. I wouldn't hang out with, like, a depressed 12-year-old if I was as cool as Tiger Lily. Tinkerbell never has her name explained. We never see her with any other fairies. We never see any other fairies, period, I don't think. And also, at some point in the story, it's revealed that Peter doesn't actually understand her. Like, he's not listening to her. Listen to black women! Honestly, like, the Tinkerbell backstory, it might have just hit the cutting room floor, you know? Like, sometimes that happens. Things get taken out for time. I mean, who knows? Maybe someday we'll get a DVD of this and there will be some deleted scenes, but until then... there's no explanation for Tinkerbell's name. But yeah, in the film's current state, there isn't enough information about Tinkerbell for anyone not familiar with the character to really know anything about her. Oh, speaking of cutting things for time, that is also something I appreciated about this movie. It's 90 minutes. I don't know what it is. Every fucking movie needs to be, like, a 3-hour epic. Like, no. Just tell me a story and get out of my face. Thank you, David Lowery, for respecting my time. Anyways, I really like the Hideout. It's, like, not actually underground in this one. It's, like, a dilapidated house that's, like, made of stone, so it kind of looks like this ancient castle that, like, nature has overtaken. And when I was watching this for the first time, I was like, that layout looks familiar. Is this a copy of the Darling's home? And it was. I love that. I mean, first of all, you know me, I love a good set. But also, I love the idea that, like, basically the Neverland house is the Darling's home, but with different decorations. Especially because, as I've said, and as we'll get more into later, Wendy is just as disappointed in her life in Neverland as she was with her life back home. So they're in the hideout. Things are winding down from the day, but still tense. And Wendy asks Peter why he and Hook even still fight. Peter gives, like, a non-answer, but this is, like, the third or fourth time in this story that it's been hinted at that there's more to Hook's backstory. Like, there's more to Hook and Peter's sort of dynamic, and that Hook wasn't always Hook. Smee at some point mentioned that he met Hook as a child, Hook when he was a child, Smee was an adult. The Lost Boys have cryptically mentioned Hook's past to Wendy, so the foundation has been set, and it's time for some exposition, baby. So from here on out, we're gonna call this not just spoilers, but major spoilers. So if you don't want to know what happens in the rest of the movie, just turn off the video now. Wendy goes up the stairs of this alternate version of her house to the alternate nursery, and the door says James's room, but then James is scratched out and it says Peter. Wendy goes into... what was that? Wendy... I'm sorry, my voice decided to drop in the middle of this review and in the middle of an important sentence. So Wendy talks to Peter, and Peter reveals that Hook was actually the first Lost Boy. Oh my god, when I watched that, I knew that the girlies on the Peter Pan Discord were gonna lose it. I mean, not that I'm going back to check. I had to get out of Discord. I'm old, I can't do that.
I am old and gray, and I've lost my way.
Also, I had just seen enough Sweet Pete erotica. But that's another story for another day.
All my tomorrows.
If you're not plugged into the Peter Pan fandom, the Peter Pandom, if you will, the way that I am, you might not know this, but people really do enjoy, like, playing off of the original story in interesting ways. Like, this idea that Hook was the very first Lost Boy, this isn't even the first time I've seen that, actually. I mean, the first book that I can think of off the top of my head is Lost Boy, The True Story of Captain Hook by Christina Henry. I haven't read it yet. Quick note, I am not saying that this film stole that idea. Look at me, I'm not accusing anyone of that. What I am saying is that this is the exact kind of, like, interesting dynamic between Hook and Peter that people have wanted to see, like, in a mainstream work for a long time. Like, people really like that idea, and for those people, I really hope that they enjoyed that reveal, because I personally think that it was well done in this film. So after that conversation, Peter flies off. Wendy goes back downstairs, but ruh-roh, Raggy, the pirates are here. Hook goes upstairs to find Peter, and as he's looking around, he says, "How many times did we play hide-and-seek in these ruins? You were always the best at hiding." And then I, the smartass watching, went, "From your problems, oh!" In a move that I never saw coming, Hook immediately slashes Peter across the chest. Peter falls down 3 flights of stairs and fucking dies. Like, the pirates, Tinkerbell, the Lost Boys, they all think that Peter's dead. Like, it's not just taking Hook's word for it that he planted a bomb or poisoned Peter. Like, they watched him. They are looking at his lifeless corpse right now. They watched him hit the floor so hard that he broke through the floor and went into the room below it. So, they all leave. Peter is lying motionless in the rubble. Again, I'm assuming that he's dead. But Peter's shadow sits up. I have honestly watched and read so many adaptations of Peter Pan that my brain is kind of melting, but I think that this might be one of the first times I've seen the shadow have, like, the first time I've seen the shadow be its own character. Like, not just a magical, haha, you lost your shadow, but, like, a sentient being who is part of the story. Like, remember, earlier there was that scene where Peter's shadow and Hook's shadow had their own separate sword fight from Peter and Hook. And now it has purposefully disconnected itself from Peter and is going to get Tiger Lily for help. Like, the shadow isn't just some weird object. Like, maybe I should be calling it he. I don't want to start anything. Peter already got mad about Tink's pronouns. I'm trans, I will call anyone anything. Like, also, just one of my hopes for eventually getting more behind the scenes stuff is to see, like, what was the process of making the shadow. Like, in the 2003, there was, like, this whole little segment in the DVD about how they, like, were miming the shadow's movements and, like, how they turned it into an image and, like, the shadow actually transforms into another person. I want behind the scenes, Disney. Take my money so behind the scenes go into my eyeballs. Anyways, so while the shadow is going to get Tiger Lily, we're getting part 2 of Hook's backstory in the Jolly Roger. It turns out that Hook didn't leave Neverland. He was purposefully banished by Peter because Hook missed his mom. I mean, damn, Peter, it would be less cold if you just killed him. I mean, I guess this is in character for Peter. He did banish Tinkerbell for trying to get Wendy blasted out of the sky. But, like, missing your mom is not a crime. If it was, every one of my students would get arrested every single day. So, Hook was alone, abandoned, lost at sea, and apparently Smee pulled him out of the water and raised him. And I love that. Smee, in most adaptations, just exists purely to be an extension of Captain Hook. So just first of all, having a mention that he had a life before Hook is, like, great on its own. But also, and I don't know if this was purposefully harkening back to the book, but Smee is actually very sweet to children. He has a sort of paternal softness that he doesn't really get to express because he's part of a band of pirates whose sole mission in life is to murder a bunch of children. So him sort of getting to be a dad is interesting. Also, by the pirate code, the captain of the ship has to be voted on. So I'm wondering how many people on the Jolly Roger also witnessed Hook grow up to be this maladjusted, trigger-happy havoc and, like, still chose to vote for him. Do you think it happened once he got the hook? Like, they were like, oh, this guy's got a weapon for a hand. That's who should be running a ship. I'm going to pause right here and say that in my trailer reaction, I initially said that I was kind of bummed out that the roles of Hook and Mr. Darling weren't double cast, because they often are, where one actor is playing both roles. And I thought that Jude Law or Alan Tudyk could totally nail that, and I stand by that. But now I feel, after watching the film, that it would have been, one, distracting, and two, pointless. Because while the original and adaptations will sometimes have Mr. Darling and Hook both represent adulthood, with Mr. Darling being this, like, frigid product of an oppressive adult society that the children are afraid of entering into, and Hook sort of being this purposefully hostile adult who makes himself the antagonist of childhood itself. I mean, I think that there's a reason that originally Hook was described to be a former headmaster at a school. Sounds like the antagonist of childhood to me. So even though these characters are very different, they can both kind of represent what the kids are afraid of, not only afraid of adults, but what they may become when they become adults themselves. But even though this story definitely has a lot to say about, like, change and growing up and leaving the familiar and becoming something different, with all these elements at play with Wendy, Peter, and Hook, the narrative would honestly gain nothing from adding Mr. Darling to the mix. He barely shows up for 5 seconds, and, like, he just, like, puts the dog out. Like, not as a punishment, just, like, that's where Nana sleeps, I guess. It's time to put the dog out. I think that it all came down to deciding who was doing what as it related to the film's central themes. So instead of them being this joint idea, sort of two sides of the same coin, this Captain Hook, in this specific story, in this way that his character exists, is just him. Like, this Hook and this Mr. Darling don't even belong in the same sentence together. Hook in this version is all of someone's worst fears about what they might become when they enter adulthood. Like, he literally tells Wendy to her face, all his joy is lost. He is now literally and figuratively stuck in this endless cycle of trying and failing to kill his childhood trauma and never ever letting himself grow into something beyond that. Yet another piece of media primed for right where you left me. Hell, I'm still on the pirate ship, still feeling like a bag of shit, 'cause I wanna be a weird girl, weird girl, weird girl. So anyways, Hook is ready to kill the rest of these kids, but, like, what's his plan? What would he do if it actually played out? Like, and he actually murdered all these kids, especially Peter. I mean, he is a pirate. He can go back to pirating, but, like, would he even enjoy it? This adaptation is honestly the first one to really make me question that. Like, why would Hook even want to succeed? Meanwhile, Tiger Lily made it to the hideout and she is trying to revive Peter. She succeeds, so Peter's alive, but oh no, he can't fly. How will he make it to the children? Oh my god, Tiger Lily's gonna help. It's almost like Wendy was right, and Peter can ask for help, and that's not a bad thing. While Wendy is being prepped for her walk down the plank, we get another banger of a sea shanty, and it's, like, very dire. It's like I don't know a lot about music, but I feel like the best way to describe this is like an execution march. Like it you know, you, the person watching this, you've seen movies before, and like when they're on their way to get hanged or something, you hear the do 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 do, like the dire drums of death. Like the tone it sets is like so bleak. And it was at this point that my partner turned to me and was like, this is a lot darker than the original. I think that each adaptation is like dark in its own ways, but this one just had like a very thematically appropriate time to show it. But just when all hope seems lost, and Wendy is jumping off the plank, she starts to think happy thoughts. And then something happens that I didn't expect. Wendy's happy thoughts are not just of her past, of like her carefree childhood, but they're of her future. In this split second, she imagines like actually going off to school and like making friends and traveling and being with her family and even growing old. As she falls, she starts to smile. The pirates wait to hear a splash, and there isn't one. So Tinkerbell, who had previously been imprisoned in a lantern, escapes. She puts pixie dust on Wendy and also on the entire ship. I will remind you that in the source material, Wendy is saved by Peter. And we'll come back to my analysis of Wendy because I need to finish the plot. But let the record show, Wendy's winning hand was putting faith in her own happiness. I honestly do not see this as some cheap, like, girl power moment. Like, oh, I can save myself. Like, no. This is the thesis of Wendy's character. And we'll get back to it. So Tinkerbell pixie dusts the whole ship. It's coming out of the water. The pirates are scrambling. And then here comes Tiger Lily and Peter riding on a white horse. Peter triumphantly jumps off a cliff, even though he can't fly because he's a moron. And Hook is like, how did you do it? And Peter is like, I did it with a little help from my friends. Insert Beatles joke. So his arc is admitting finally that he's not an island. No pun intended. Like, he's not alone, and it's okay to ask for help. Which, now that I think about it, is a very good thing to teach children, that it's okay to ask for help. So everybody starts fighting. Tiger Lily jumps off the cliff as well, and I guess for gender equality, I should also call her a moron. I will say in this film, it's not the most complex fight choreography I've ever seen, but the way that they use the camera work, like, really makes it look good. Like, there's... like, the camera will, like, follow a person, or it'll kind of make the shot look longer as someone lunges. Like, it really adds weight to people's movements, and it looks really good. I'm gonna try and show as much as I can on the screen without getting copyright claimed, because, like, I really appreciate... good fight choreography isn't enough. You also have to have good camera work. Also, I only noticed this on my second rewatch, but there's a guy who's just playing the ukulele the entire fight. Like, he doesn't do anything, and I don't think we even hear his... I don't even think we hear his instrument. He's just there in the background of some shots going... I don't know, maybe that was like a joke that got cut, but look at this guy. Who is this guy? The rest is exactly what you would want in a Peter Pan film. There's swords, there's arrows, there's people getting stabbed, the ship gets flipped upside down, and there's an Inception fight in the captain's quarters. While everything is upside down, Peter starts to fall, and he can't fly, like I said, but Wendy can, so she actually catches him. She catches him, gives him pixie dust, and he's able to fly again. Again, I do not believe that this is a cheap girl power moment. I think that it is the point of Peter's arc. Peter's big arc in this film is learning how to trust friends. Like Wendy said, he clearly relies on others, but his past with Hook has made him, like, closed off and not actually want to be vulnerable with the people around him. And now here he is, getting help. And that's how they save the day, is all the kids working together. Also, it was at this point that I realized that there is no romance in the movie at all. Like, not between Peter and Wendy, not between Peter and Tinkerbell, not between Tiger Lily and Peter, or Tiger Lily and John. Like, there's no romance in this film. It's all friendship. Good. This film is 100% about the power of friendship. And speaking of, so Peter and Hook are having their little, like, end of the fight scene dialogue, and Hook just outright says that their relationship is symbiotic, that they're basically meaningless without the other. And I mean, I guess that, like, we as audiences could argue that, but, like, especially in this adaptation. And then Peter does something that I did not expect. There's so much in this movie that I did not expect. And then Peter does something that I did not expect because it actually involves emotional maturity. Peter apologizes for hurting his friend. I mean, it didn't magically solve anything, obviously. Like, how old is Jude Law? He's 50. So if he was banished at, like, 10, this feud's been going on for, like, at least 40 years, right? In all my years of Peter Pan obsession, I've actually never tried to assign literal years as a measurement of Peter and Hook's relationship. Okay, let's follow this train of thought, because honestly, if we're being generous, at this point only 2 people are watching this video, and of those 2, only 1 is actually paying any attention. Hi, Mary! So in the source material, Hook is said to be the only man that Barbecue feared. Barbecue being the nickname for Long John Silver, who is a character in Robert Louis Stevenson's book Treasure Island. He's the quartermaster under Captain Flint, and J.M. Barrie wrote a reference to his friend's work for what we must assume are very heterosexual reasons. Captain Flint buried his famous treasure in 1750. So if we guesstimate that Hook and Silver crossed paths within like a 5-year radius of that date, we can tentatively hypothesize that Hook was, I don't know, we'll say like 30 in the year 1750. Peter's origin in the Little White Bird has no dates listed. All it says is that he is ever so old that even your grandmother would know, your grandmother being someone who was reading this work in the early 1900s. Like, even she knew about him. Kensington Gardens is where he initially lived when he first ran away from home as a baby. And Kensington Gardens is, like, old as balls. But apparently the Serpentine Lake, where Peter lived, was only made around 1728. So, I mean, like, shit, for all we know, Peter and Hook were born, like, in the same year, in the 1700s. So let's assume that Hook, for whatever reason or another, sailed off towards Neverland in 1751, and that's when he and Peter crossed paths and started their feud. If that feud went all the way until 1911, the year that Peter Pan and Wendy was published, assuming that's the year that the story takes place, that means that Hook and Peter have been fighting each other for 160 years. I can't imagine hating someone for that long. Like, I can barely be mad at someone for, like, a year or 2. But, you know, like, I have other things going on. You know, I'm not on a pirate ship. I have friends, a job. I live in a city I can walk around in. I mean, I guess this is what you did before TV. You just picked some person in your life and decided that they were your nemesis, and that's how you got your serotonin, by just being a hater. Sorry, I got sidetracked there. Anyways, so back to Peter and James talking. James, obviously, is not taking all of this well, and saying sorry doesn't magically make him feel better. And he's like, no, you have to fight me. I need you to fight me. And Peter says, this isn't fun anymore. And Hook goes, it isn't supposed to be fun! Because his character journey, hello, is a cyclical one of, loathing and self-sabotage. Their exchange ends with Hook falling off the ship. Peter actually reaches for James to save him, like, gives him pixie dust and everything, and tells him to think happy thoughts. To which James responds, I haven't got any. And he plunges into the water. So the pirates are defeated, even if we're sad about it this time. And it's time to fly to London. Bye, Tiger Lily. I guess this is your island now. So this film follows the same logic as the animated one, where all of these events take place over the course of, like, just a couple of hours in the not Neverland world. But like the source material, the Lost Boys come home to the Darlings. So Mr. and Mrs. Darling come up to the nursery because they hear a noise, and they're like, where the fuck all these kids come from? Meanwhile, up on the roof, Peter is sitting with Tinkerbell, and Jolly Roger is, like, tied to the chimney as its anchor. And he's like, boy, why are you crying? And again, that was written for losers like me, so thank you, people who made this film, for that. And we learn that in this version of the story, Peter used to live in the house that the Darlings now live in. Hi. It's my other doggy. His name is written on the chimney, and apparently the reason that he ran away from home was because, like, his mom was, like, scolding him one day and is like, you need to grow up. And he ran away, but he keeps coming back to the house because he also misses his mom. Why is this movie making me so emo? Peter laments all that has happened and all that he's missed and all that he's become. Wendy tells him that he could stay, and when Peter shows distress about the idea of growing up, Wendy is like, maybe growing up is the biggest adventure of all. But in the end, Peter's not ready to grow up. And that's okay. It's okay to not be ready. It's just that, you know, Peter happens to magically, like, have a magical way of never having to be ready. So Peter flies off with the ship. Tinkerbell comes to say goodbye to Wendy. And then Wendy and the audience can actually hear her for the first time. We stan women supporting women. Also, these two actors, the ones who play Peter and Wendy, they're like really good criers. I always appreciate good crying in a movie. You know, they have like the, you know, I can't do it, but you know, like where it's like just around the edges, like. Anyways, Peter flies off. And under his name on the chimney, Wendy writes, "And Wendy." Cut to black. Fade out of black to a bunch of just shit floating in the ocean. And among that stuff is Hook and Smee, who I guess apparently survived, so that's nice for them. But then, who's that? It's Peter! Back with the ship! The music is happy, kind of triumphant. So it's like, are they going to keep repeating the cycle? Is there going to be a change? I don't know. It's kind of open-ended. And I think this is because of the themes.
Tonight's theme is themes.
Okay, so let's really talk about Wendy and what she goes through in this story. The film is called Peter Pan and Wendy, and from my perspective, that's because these two represent very different things, and those things clashing, with Hook caught somewhere in the middle. As I've said, Wendy was actually not happy in Neverland. She doesn't immediately run away and become part of the island, but then eventually grow dissatisfied like she does in the original and in other adaptations. Like, she doesn't feel at home, and Peter is vocally disappointed at the fact that she's not happy. Like, the main source of tension between these two characters through most of the story is that Peter brought Wendy here, like for his own selfish reasons, and then her not being happy about that throws a wrench into the whole system of like this perfect little world that Peter tries to maintain. Like, he really wanted the two of them to be friends, but their differences in worldview and like, I guess the difference in their emotional needs means that they are never on the same page. They never have enough in common to even be, like, excited in the same moment until the very end of the film. While we're on the subject of Peter bringing the Darlings to Neverland, yes, we have the Lost Boys in this story, but there's no mention of them being Lost Boys because they fell out of their prams as babies. So with Peter bringing the Darlings to Neverland, it kind of seems like Peter just kind of steals kids willy-nilly. But honestly, that could really work with the whole thing of Hook being the former best friend. Like, Peter is just so lonely that he just constantly is surrounded by kids, so that he can always be on adventures and he never has to think about his emotions for even a single second. So in this arc of being afraid of change, running off to Neverland, and still not being happy in Neverland, in the final battle, Wendy needs happy thoughts and thinks not only of her childhood, but of the adolescence and adulthood she has yet to have, which really surprised me in a good way. Like, the conclusion of Wendy's arc is the positivity of adulthood and growing up. Like, not just, oh, it's okay to grow up, but like actual reasons to celebrate leaving childhood, which can be a really scary thing. So in the movie Hook, Peter's motivation for leaving Neverland and growing up is because he wants to be a father. And being a grown-up is the only way that he can do that. It's the only way that he can experience this deep form of love that he wouldn't have had access to before. And in the 2003 movie, Peter starts to kind of come out of the haze of like childhood carelessness because he starts to have very real feelings for Wendy. So even though that love is still like puppy love and not an adult love per se, it is still something that can't be stabbed with a sword. It's a part of him that requires self-reflection and emotional maturity, and that scares him. So in these other Peter Pan adaptations, we, the audience, can see that characters are drawn to change and to growing up with love as a motivator. Because those are forms of love that should be celebrated, even though that's scary because those forms of love take you away from the carelessness of early childhood. And if we're looking at it that way, Wendy is experiencing a sort of self-love, a wish to live her life to the fullest, not as a shunning of her childhood and what made it special, but as the evolution of who she is. Like, growing up isn't destroying your childhood, it's letting the you from your childhood be the you that you can only be if you enter a new chapter of your life. And those next parts of your life are things that you deserve to experience. Like, in the beginning of the movie, Wendy's talking to her mom, and she, you know, is like, I want things to stay the way they are. And Mom says, "Time will march on whether you like it or not. Just imagine all the things you would miss out on if you didn't see where it took you, and all the things the world would miss if you weren't there to do them." That is the central theme of Wendy's arc. That's why the thing that saved her from the pirates, aka this representation of, like, toxic, joyless adulthood, is giving herself the freedom to have a joyous future. It feels like on a spectrum, Wendy is on one end, where growing up is something to be celebrated, and Peter's on the exact opposite end, because he's frozen and he's afraid of change. And Hook is somewhere in the middle where, like, he wants to move on from the trauma of his childhood, but obsessing over that trauma keeps him from having the thing that Wendy allows to give herself. At the very beginning of the video, I mentioned that I made up a reason why Hook has heterochromia, and here it is. One of his eyes is the same color as Peter's eyes, and the other eye is the same color as Wendy's eyes. It's like he's stuck, split between their perspectives. Oh! Again, not canon, but shut up. This is my video. I get to do whatever I want. And I think that having these three characters be that way, it works. So much of a good story is the characters' wants and needs colliding with each other and conflicting with each other. And I think that it really works in this. I really liked it. I mean, obviously I liked it. I wrote 30 pages of a script about it. Like, maybe this is a lot. Maybe it'll go over the heads of the kids who are watching it right now. But, you know, who knows? Maybe they'll grow up and one day when they're 30, they'll make videos overanalyzing children's media. But what I'm saying is, I see what this film is going for. I see it, and I appreciate it, and I think it works. Now, to answer the question of the preliminary keyboard clacking, is this film going to be considered a classic in the same way as the 1953 or the 2003? I don't know, and neither do you. Let's all check back here in 20 years and see what the verdict is. Oh God. Will YouTube even be around? Will it be called Why? So that's all the things that I think made this adaptation good. I guess a good question to ask, as I continue this never-ending journey of looking at Peter Pan adaptations, is what do I want to see in future adaptations now that I've seen this one? Firstly, I need everyone in the human race to unbunch their panties. Throwing a giant fit anytime there are women or minorities in a work is wasting your precious time on this earth. And your bitching is making it hard for people to enjoy art. So shut up. Secondly, I would love to see more messing with the source material. I am a source material snob, I can admit that. But if the changes are compelling and serve some greater purpose, I can get behind it. And I'm not the only one. Peter Pan is a story that has touched so many people's imaginations. I mean, it's a story about imagination. It's the place where you go when you're asleep. The private world in your mind that makes you who you are. My videos are listed in chronological order of when the thing came out, but at the time of recording, this is like the 11th video in the series. So I have so many more things to talk about, so many more people's takes on the story, so many other people's imagination to pour over. And lastly, Peter should get to say the F word. This has nothing to do with anything I've been talking about, but as the world's premier Peter Pan expert, Peter Pexpert, if you will, I think that it's time. I think that Peter should get to say fuck.